All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the 5th Annual Green Sports Alliance Summit. Another record year for attendance. Thanks for all coming out and supporting it. All right, I'm Scott Jenkins, Board Chair of the Green Sports Alliance and General Manager of the new Atlanta Stadium with A&B Sports and Entertainment. It's a pleasure to be here in Chicago. What a beautiful city it is. It feels like we've been here for quite a while, although this is just our kickoff event for the summit. We've been here for a couple days, and we'll share with you some of those things we've done. Has anyone been out on the waterfront to take a walk around? Of course, it's a little rainy. If you were here over the weekend, it was absolutely beautiful, and the skyline of Chicago is just gorgeous. We were out for dinner last night with our board, and we were about 3.8 miles away from here, and we thought it was a good idea to walk back. It really was a good idea, but it was even a better idea to grab a bike about a half mile into that walk. So without helmets, after a few drinks, got on the bike and rode along the lakeshore, and thankfully we all made it back safely. But if you get out there and you can look back from the observatory in the evening hours or in the morning, it is absolutely a gorgeous skyline. We had more than one bike. We were not all on that bike. We're good, but we are not a circus. So let's see here. We also had a great event on Sunday, and I want to acknowledge Connor Sports for sponsoring the Chicago Green Sports Green Apple Day of Service yesterday. Partners included Connor Sports, Chicago Public Schools, HOK, Skanska, Excel, United States Green Building Council, Center for Green Schools, and United States Green Building Council, Illinois, all came together for a great day of sprucing up a playground at the Robert Healy Elementary School. So let's see the handiwork we did.
This weekend, the Green Sports Alliance and members and partners made a difference in the city of Chicago in the shadow of two of the city's pro sports stadiums. On Saturday, the GSA Green Apple Day of Service, presented by Connor Sports, brought a team of dozens of Connor volunteers in partnership with the Noah's Ark Foundation to paint the entire gym at the Major Adams Community Center, just blocks from the United Center.
It's just one of many projects that she's brought to us that we've benefited from, and primarily the kids in this neighborhood of West Haven. They are just so beneficial of what Noah's Ark Foundation is doing for us. And again, thanks, Jason, Warren, Connor Sports, because this is just fantastic. Wish you could be here.
Yesterday, Connor Sports and more than 100 volunteers from Connor Sports and Day of Service partners descended on the Robert Healy Elementary School near Cellular Field to line and paint the school's outdoor play area and leave behind a vibrant new sport-themed wall mural and beautiful new planters and foliage.
Yeah, well, it's awesome to partner with you guys, first of all, and partner with our members and our board members, and to get the kids out here, and everyone rallies around sports teams, right?
Sure.
The Blackhawks just won. People are excited about that. We'll be doing football season soon. The NBA does some great work. The NHL is doing great work. And so the power of sports really brings people out and galvanizes the movement and brings people together to do good things and have fun doing it.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, Connor Sports, and to everyone who participated. It was a great day. Oh, I jumped too far. We continue to grow, and it's hard to believe, this is the 5th annual summit, but it's only 4 years ago that we met in Portland, just 3 months after launching the Green Sports Alliance. We launched March of 11, held a summit in Portland with 125, maybe 150 people, and we're pushing 700 plus. And our membership keeps growing. So it's great to have that kind of success, and it's really because of you guys who are here to support us in the great work that our partners are doing, our sponsors, our supply chain, the leagues, the teams, the venues. So I should probably get in the spirit of things a little bit, because after all, this is a sports event. Do we have any Blackhawk fans out there? All right, admire this because it could be yours. I'm just borrowing it for a few moments. The journey we've had on our membership, again, we launched with 11 teams and venues March 11th. We had the first summit in Portland. We had 39 teams. We went to Seattle, 159 members. We went to New York, 201. We got to 244 last year, and this year we finally topped over 300 members. So congrats to everyone who's made that happen. Now, you guys don't want to be the only folks out there knowing what fun we're having in Chicago. So hashtag Green Sports. Let's blow up Twitter, guys. Take some photos, send some messages, and let them know we're doing some good work here in Chicago. You can also follow along in the conversation on Facebook and Instagram. Let's see. And how many people have downloaded our app? Hopefully a bunch of you. Great. Good deal. We don't need to print much anymore. We're all on our phone. So you can go to the App Store, Green Sports Alliance Summit, and download it. I suggest you do that. And there are activities and opportunities to win prizes in conjunction with the app, including this Blackhawk signed jersey by three-time Stanley Cup champion Jonathan Toews. So, sorry. So get out there and use your app. Glad you're paying attention. I'd like to thank our title sponsor, UPS, presenting sponsor BASF, and sponsors like Aramark, Wells Fargo, Stoller Family Estate, OSI Soft, Shift Energy, Stock Market, NatureWorks, and all others for making the summit possible. And it not only makes the summit possible, but it makes it possible for us to do what we do throughout the year and to support our staff on the great work they're doing. So it is absolutely critical to us, and thank you. Special thanks to Waste Management. The Green Sports Alliance Summit they're our official zero waste partner. They're helping us create a zero waste event, so stay tuned on the results of how we do as we get into Wednesday. On that note, all disposable serviceware items used for the summit are compostable. We have 3 bins from Green Drop waste stations throughout the building. Please read the signs carefully and help us reach our zero waste goals. If in doubt, ask one of our volunteers in the lime green shirts. A big thank you to Wildlife Works for providing travel offsets and BEF for providing water restoration credits and REX to offset the energy and water used here at the summit and for our hotel stays. We are so pleased to have the 2015 summit delivered by UPS. Please welcome Director of Global Sponsorship and Sustainability, Betsy Wilson. Betsy holds the position of Director of Global Sponsorship and Sustainability Communications at UPS. Betsy manages UPS's global sponsorship program with responsibility for strategy and activation of platforms such as collegiate athletics, NCAA, IMG College, motorsports, Ferrari F1, NASCAR, and entertainment, Live Nation. Betsy is also responsible for UPS's corporate social responsibility communications, including the development and publication of the UPS Sustainability Report. Betsy joined UPS in 2003 after an 8-year advertising agency career at companies including BBDO, JWT, Fitzgerald & Company. And in her first 10 years at UPS, Betsy managed global advertising and relationship marketing programs for the company. Betsy, thank you.
Hi, good evening, everybody, and I'll add my welcome to this year's summit. We're excited as UPS. I'm representing our UPSers here. I'm excited to be back for our second year of delivering the Green Sports Alliance Summit. If you were here last year, you heard me probably tell you why on earth a company like UPS would sponsor an event like this. So for those of you that were here last year, sorry, I'm going to touch on this one more time. But for those of you who are new, I'll fill you in. But it's pretty simple why a company like UPS is here. First and foremost, we care about sustainability. We work hard to understand the impacts that we have in the world. We own a large airline. We own 100,000 vehicles. We operate in 220 countries around the world. We have impacts. And we work every single day to figure out how we can innovate, how we can solve problems, how we can be better. to limit those impacts. And we need to collaborate with folks to be better. And that's part of the reason we're here. But we also believe in the power of sports. I think, when everybody cheered when he put on the Blackhawks jersey, people are passionate about sports. We see it all the time, and we use sports as a way to connect with our customers. We take people to the Masters, we take people to the Final Four, and we're taking them because we know they're passionate about that. And, they get pretty excited, and then we can sell them stuff, right? So if we could get them excited enough to pick UPS over the other guys, I know we can get them excited enough about and engage them around sustainability issues. And last but not least, being a part of the summit is all about collaborating and partnership. So we're here because we want to hear from you, we want to hear new ideas, and the lineup for the summit is really great. We're really excited to participate and hope you are too. It's off to a great start. The UPS Thought Leadership Summit this morning was great, good conversation, lots of strong ideas. The Women's Forum, the NHL program, it's just been great, and there's much, much more to come. So I encourage you to get involved and really participate. Last year when we stood here, we were just beginning our relationship with the Green Sports Alliance. And over the last year, we've just collaborated and met and tried to figure out what more can we do? And for those of you who are members of the Green Sports Alliance, you'll be hearing from us in the next few months with an opportunity for us to collaborate with you, help you understand some of the greenhouse gas emissions that your company generates through the transportation you do, and offer you some carbon neutral solutions as a special offer through the Green Sports Alliance to help you mitigate some of your impacts. So we look forward to engaging with you on that. Ask any of the UPSers who are here about that. We'd love to talk with you about it. So enough with the UPS commercial. We're excited to be here because we believe in sustainability, the power of sports, and we want to collaborate. So, we have an amazing lineup of speakers. The Green Sports Alliance has got really top-notch content. So get involved, lean into this one, and let's collaborate and find some solutions. So Scott and Alan and the GSA team, thanks for having us back, and we're looking forward to a great, great event. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Now it's my pleasure to start off with our panel here tonight. I'm going to introduce our moderator and then invite her and the panelists to come up. We have Sarah Spain. Sarah is the co-host of ESPNW Presents Spain and Prim on ESPN Radio, an ESPNW columnist, ESPN TV reporter, and a Sports Center anchor for ESPN 1000. A Chicago area native, she grew up in Lake Forest, where she played basketball and was an all-state in field hockey and track. She went on to attend Cornell University, where she was a heptathlete and captain of the track and field team. Before joining ESPN in 2010, she worked for other outlets including Fox Sports Net, the Big Ten Network, and WGN Radio and TV. So with that, Sarah and the panelists, would you please come on up?
Thank you. I guess they can come up as I introduce them, and then you'll be able to tell them all apart, all three of them. So we'll start with Brendan Brazier. So Brendan is the international best-selling author of the Thrive book series, co-founder and editor-in-chief of Thrive magazine, creator and host of the Thrive Forward web series, and is recognized as one of the world's foremost authorities on plant-based nutrition, and is a nutrition consultant for the Cannonade Garmin Pro Cycling Team, as well as athletes from the NHL, MLB, MLS, UFC, and Olympians. Former professional Ironman triathlete, two-time Canadian 50-kilometer ultramarathon champion, and the creator of Vega, the award-winning line of whole food nutritional products. Up next, Caroline Gleich. She's one of the most photographed skiers in the world. She's appeared in hundreds of publications and in several ski movies, and she's establishing herself as one of the leading ski mountaineers in the world, pursuing human-powered objectives on some of the biggest peaks globally. And when she's climbing these ski pursuits, she's witnessed the effects of climate change firsthand in the rapid melting of high-altitude glaciers, reduced snowpack in her home mountains, and that prompted her to take action. She's an outspoken activist, working with nonprofits like Protect Our Winters, Heal Utah, and Utah Moms for Clean Air. She also uses her social media to use imagery to tell compelling stories and get people interested in the cause. She has a Bachelor's of Science in Anthropology from the University of Utah, briefly worked for the environmental advisor to the governor of Utah before deciding she could be a stronger and more well-known advocate as an athlete in the outdoor industry. She lives and trains in Salt Lake and is a full-time sponsored athlete working with socially responsible companies like Patagonia, Cliff Bar, Nordica, Jaybird, Lecky, Goal Zero, and Pret Helmets. And finally, professional big wave surfer Greg Long, who started surfing at the age of 12 and established competitively at the age of 12. I'm sure he was in the water well before that. Had a profound connection with the ocean from the beginning, seeking out the biggest waves he could find. And after ending his amateur career in 2001 with a national championship title, he decided to go against the grain of many other surfers, and instead of doing a life of competitive surfing, he would create his own unique career path, tracking the largest storms on the globe so he could find and ride the world's biggest waves. 13 years later, referred to by many as the best big wave surfer on the planet, having won every major big surfing competition and multiple XXL global big wave awards. And they've been featured in films, magazines, all sorts of publications around the globe. And while surfing and traveling, he started thinking about what surfers leave behind when they're done and got interested in working with sustainable surf, what surfers can change in their daily actions, how they can make changes in technology to use less toxins and use more sustainable materials for surf equipment, and influence companies to be more mindful when working with their athletes and their events. So you all have a lot in common, but you all have different approaches, whether it's using photography, technology, nutrition to sort of be influential. So just a little bit of a quick intro about what makes you a green sports pioneer and why you're here. I'll start with you, Brendan.
Well, for me, it's food. I got into doing triathlon when I was around 15, and at the time I was very selfish. I was 15. I cared about me getting better quickly. So I tried different ways of eating to try and speed recovery. I found that really had a big impact on my performance. So then I started eating a certain way to help performance, and I learned later, much later, about the environmental impacts of our food choices and how that could help, and how making good choices for ourselves, obviously for performance, were also good choices environmentally. So there's a social element to that too.
Caroline?
As an outdoor athlete, we are so connected to the earth. I have always been an environmentalist at heart ever since I was a little kid, and I think that my excitement to contribute to these different causes comes from that curiosity of like asking those questions. Where does the electricity for the lights come from, or what is in our water, or what's in our air? Like, how can we make our world like a better place? So through that, I became involved with a couple of different nonprofits, and actually that's how I came to be connected with the Green Sports Alliance through Protect Our Winners, which is one of the nonprofits that I'm pretty active with. So yeah, that's kind of how I got involved.
And Greg?
I literally grew up with the ocean as my playground, and with a deep respect for the natural beauty it presents in so many ways, so many people's lives, whether you're just walking down to the beach and enjoying it for the scenery, or actually physically out there riding waves. And really the impact that we were having, and then seeing it growing up in the surfing industry that has literally built its entire foundation upon this natural resource, and what are we actually doing, the initiatives to protect and preserve it so it's there for the future generations. And when you look across the board at how the clothing that's being produced by the industry, the practices there, the materials that are being constructed into these surfboards, and the petroleum-based wetsuits that we're using, it's not a sustainable kind of business model. So what is the next step to changing that narrative? And so it was, much as Brendan was saying, the first portion of my career was very goal-oriented, driven, and it got to a point where I was looking at the accomplishments and achievements, and the greatest ones that I recognized were the feats outside of these competitions, but actually making the difference that I could look back and would stand the test of time, not just another trophy on the mantle that someone else is going to end up replacing with a bigger wave or whatever else. And so that was where my energy really shifted in towards getting involved with these different organizations that are on the ground making these changes.
And both of you sort of touched on the next point, which is that we often see X Games and outdoor athletes get involved in conservation efforts. There's that natural organic tie to your field or your court being a mountain or the ocean, something that does get threatened as opposed to a basketball court or football field that can be regenerated in any place at any time. So while you guys have very powerful voices, and there certainly are X Games and outdoor sport athletes that have powerful voices, few can touch the influence of some of the top four from the NBA, NFL, MLB, and hockey. We definitely see more hockey players involved from growing up playing pond hockey and having that connection. But what are the best ways that we can kind of try to get people outside of the outdoor sports and X Games realm to get involved? How do we get them to speak out? Because a lot of them are willing to speak out on issues, whether it's Black Lives Matter or, Trayvon Martin, all those, but they haven't, not a lot have stepped into this realm. What do you see as sort of obstacles for them, and how would you kind of convince them that it's something that they should get involved with as well?
I think the number one challenge that you're up against is educating people. I mean, how can people truly fall in love with something or have that desire to protect or preserve it if they don't really understand it or love it the way that we do? And so I think it's just getting them to kind of take a step back from the world. We all come from very respective lives, but some people aren't, as you mentioned, around or using these natural resources the way that we are. Don't value them the same way. But when you get people to slow down and take a look at the bigger picture, outside of where it is that they live or where they come from in their lives, and look at it from a global perspective as we're all one human family living on one planet with a certain number of resources, and the direction that we're going, it's not going to be sustainable for much longer unless these changes are taking place, and empowering them that they have a voice and they reach thousands and thousands of people. And it's a very simple, for me, when you have this conversation, showing people that bigger picture, the right from wrong, and easy alternatives that they can partake in and then share with others. And it's just the education process that perpetually grows, and that's the number one thing that I've seen in my interaction with people outside of these sports that are directly involved.
Get LeBron and Peyton and Tom Brady surfing and skiing, and I'm sure they all ski, right? That's what rich athletes do, but maybe we'll get them out in the surf as well.
But I also think they have such a huge reach, and like skiing and surfing, they're kind of niche sports, whereas like football and baseball, they're so mainstream. So one of the biggest things, because I've thought a lot about this question leading up to this event, and one of the biggest things I think is just to examine our own lives and look at the systems around us, like look at our house and see if there's a way we can improve, like maybe plant an organic vegetable garden. And then if you can share that experience online, like through your social media following, that can have a huge impact. Just that small action is a great place to start. So the other thing I would say, like on a bigger level, is don't be afraid to be disruptive, to like question the status quo and to kind of ask uncomfortable questions of your sponsors or maybe some of the stadiums. Like in Utah where I live, the stadiums are sponsored by the Rocky Mountain Power, and Energy Solutions is one of the biggest nuclear waste disposal. They handle that in the state, and so they're kind of linked to really dirty energy. Mm-hmm. And if some athletes were to call those people out, then that could be a really effective way to get the ball rolling in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think also too, and I often forget this, but it always strikes me how young a lot of these athletes are. Like, a lot of these guys are, late teens, early 20s. And when I think back to when I was that age, I was very much selfish, and I mean that in the true sense of the word. And I think you have to be a good athlete. You really have to think about yourself and put your own training and eating and everything ahead of everything else. But I think that can also lead to kind of living in a bit of a bubble, mm-hmm. and not really looking at the bigger picture, as Greg was saying. And I think kind of helping them to step back, and it's not just about them. And certainly going into, when they're in their mid-20s and, later on in life, it's, I think it's going to do them well to look at the big picture and kind of step back. And also too, looking at what do they want to do after. Their career's not going to go much past certainly not past 40, even in their 30s, a lot of them. So like, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to do after? Like, what are your other interests? So even start thinking about those at an early age, and if they tie into sustainability and some social element of what they could be building the platform towards now, then that makes sense.
Well, I think, it's an obvious answer is to educate them, to find ways, whether it's via the team itself or the sponsors, to sit them down and discuss the issues. But you're right about the conflict, and a lot of them do have a conflict. And it sometimes isn't as easy as saying, hey, why don't you call out the guy who owns your arena? It's not always that easy. So have you guys, in your own personal attempts to sort of work in conservation efforts, come across any real awkward conflicts, whether it was with a company that was putting on the event you wanted to participate in, whether it was a sponsor that was interested in working with you, where you needed to either put your foot down or say, look, we need to work together on you figuring out your conservation efforts, otherwise we can't partner?
Yeah, on numerous occasions I have where, sponsorship deals that just our, morals, values weren't really aligned with one another. But at the same time, those to me are also fantastic opportunities, as you kind of touched there on the end. So rather than just shying away and saying, oh, I'm not going to, deal with this, group or organization because they don't, think or have the same values that I do, those are the people that you need to be, integrating with and, being that voice for a change, or saying, okay, well, let's, work and try and implement these new ideas. And, obviously it gets to be a point where if you guys just aren't seeing eye to eye and, the greater vision, that I have, then, okay, maybe it's time to, focus my energies elsewhere. But I see it as an amazing opportunity, but there have been times where I just couldn't feel right. There's no point for me to sacrifice, those ethics and what I truly believe in for, a paycheck, or to, use something as a platform for, to get ahead in life. That's never why, my motives, intentions, and anything I've ever done, never will be. But by all means, times where, I looked at a company and said, all right, it's going to be, kind of getting messy here, but, let's at least, put our head in the game and see if we can, shift things around a little bit. And yeah, it's worked out in numerous occasions, and others it hasn't, but nothing ventured, nothing lost.
And maybe they left that thinking, well, we might have to think about this if we want to work with people.
Well, I think that's exactly it, is they want us to kind of guide them. Like, a lot of them aren't, in the trenches the way we are, and they want to see where the demand is coming from, and they want to see, that we don't want, like, a dirty energy company, for example, to be part of something that we're doing. So I think we're actually a value to them to kind of help shift them in the right direction. And I think, I think like you say, it can be a positive thing, and just kind of spin it that way and try and help them change.
Yeah, I get actually a lot of criticism from my fans, like on social media. People can be really critical about climate change and clean energy and having these conversations, but when it comes down to it, I think you can really structure that dialogue by admitting to be imperfect. Like, there's no human economic activity that is truly sustainable. Even if you're a hunter and gatherer, living, foraging off the land, you still are burning you have your little fire, and that's emitting toxic fumes. Mm-hmm. And so I think just admitting to be imperfect can help solve a lot of those bigger problems, because we're just trying to figure out a way to improve. Like, there's not a perfect solution.
I forgot to mention, if anyone in the audience has questions, there are people walking around at some point with note cards, and you can write them down, and at the end we'll try to get in time for them. Forgot to mention that off the top. So it's interesting, being a sports journalist, but someone who speaks out about a lot of political and social issues, I often get told to stick to sports, right? That's the go-to, which as a female sports journalist is kind of exciting, because most people aren't telling women to stick to sports, they're telling them to stick to the kitchen or various other stupid things. But I do get some blowback for that, and for speaking out about issues that are really meaningful to me. And I wonder, at what point in your careers did you feel strong enough to sort of say, I'm okay with losing Twitter followers, or with this sponsor being uncomfortable by what I'm saying because I'm in a power position? Because I think that's also an important element for people who are maybe putting their toe in the water, whether it's a company, a sponsor, a building, a vendor, that thinks, we want to be a part of this, but we're worried about the repercussions, and we're worried that people will say, stay in your lane, otherwise you're going to lose the support of people that are meaningful to us, whether that's an energy company or something else. So how do you transition from saying, I'm just an athlete, to I'm an athlete who now wants to use my role for something bigger?
Well, one thing I've found just from some personal experience with starting the company Vega about 11 years ago with a friend is we had a set of values, basically, a set of principles, nutritional principles that we stuck to. And what we found with that, because we really stood for something, we did push some people away, but the people we brought in became very devoted. Yeah. So we had a strong core, and you know the saying, like if you try and make something for everyone, you make something for nothing, for nobody. So it's really about speaking to those people and having them come on board and believe it and be part of it, and then they do your job for you. They spread the word. They talk about it because they're passionate about it, they're excited about it. Yes, the group may be smaller, but I would much rather have a smaller, passionate group to be part of than just a big kind of indifferent one. So we found that actually worked even from a business standpoint, where you may not think it would. We didn't at first, we just felt very strongly about it, so we did it, and I think in the end it actually turned out to be a very positive thing from a business objective.
Yeah, people are attracted to passion in something, devotion to something, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I've gone along this path, I've just had to learn to accept the discomfort, because when you engage people in these issues or have these discussions, or whether you're trying to like change your business strategy or evolve some part of the overall plan, it tends to be really uncomfortable, like when you get those haters on social media chiming in. But if you can just take a step back and accept the discomfort and learn to love those haters, because it's just part of a broader conversation that we all need to be having. So I think that it's important to understand that discomfort is part of evolution, and without that kind of struggle, we'd never really get anywhere.
Nobody's ever going to entirely agree with you all the time, and you have to be okay with that in your decisions, that if this is what you truly feel to be right in your heart, to not speak and vocalize that, obviously there's certain times and places where it may be appropriate, or you have to approach it in a softer manner, but in the end, unless you're going to speak up, where's the change going to happen? And if that's what your initiative and what you feel your purpose and you're hoping to accomplish, you have to be willing to put yourself out there. And as Caroline was saying, accept the criticism, but it's an amazing, if we all thought the exact same way, it'd be a boring place. So I'm always open to having those conversations that can seem confrontational, as long as they're approached with an open mind by each person. That you have rational dialogue, express your concerns or your thoughts on the issue, then it's constructive either way. That there's often times where people come from a different side of the field than I do, and I learn something from them, or at least the way that they think that I can use as a way to, all right, the next conversation I have of the sort, think about it in a way that may come across more tangible to them than the way that I was speaking. So never do I shy away from opening up and expressing how I truly feel on issues that matter to me.
I think that's a great point, and it's something that I do find when people say, why do you engage the trolls on any issue? Sometimes hearing their idiotic opinions makes it easier for you to shoot them down or get to the meat of it without even having to waste your time with them. If you are able to play devil's advocate to your own arguments, it gives you a more well-rounded approach, because you're able to express what you want to say while taking into account all the bullets that they're going to try to shoot through it before they even get to it, and it makes your argument stronger. I wonder what advice you would give people when the conversations are uncomfortable, perhaps purely because of existing bias as opposed to actual reason. So a perfect example of this is the politicization of climate change. Especially people who are here and who are interested in conservation are always going to say, well, of course, pollution is bad and we need to protect our environment, and this is an important issue. But when you've politicized it to a point where we're not even willing to say global warming. We've now changed it to climate change, and now I'm pretty sure we're not allowed to say climate change either. They're changing it to some other phrase. How do you engage with people in a way that maybe sidesteps those initial biases so that you can get to a point where you can have a conversation toward an end goal? Understanding that you may never be able to get them to be on a side of an issue that you're on, but at least that you can find a place outside of that little initial bias where you can do something.
Well, yeah, depleting resources, Greg and I were talking about this before, depleting resources people understand, like whether you believe in peak oil, science, even if you don't believe in science, if you don't believe in peak oil, if you don't believe in artificial climate change, you understand, you get the concept of inefficiency. You understand what it means to consume more oil than less oil. And, and then there's the whole, I've had this conversation before, I don't want to get too political, but talking with people who don't think burning oil is a bad thing, and more oil burning is no worse than less oil burning. So going overseas and getting this oil from countries that the United States doesn't always have the best relationship with is not a good situation to be in. So I've used that one before and just talked about, well, let's be efficient, and then we'll be more energy independent. We won't be dependent upon other countries, and it's been met with mild success, but that sometimes works. But I think just the whole bit about conservation, efficiency, in my sport anyways, like people who don't eat the way I do, they understand efficient. Like you want to put out the least amount of energy and effort to get the biggest fitness return, to get to the biggest gain. So they understand that we want to conserve, we want to be efficient. So when I start talking about resource consumption in that light, that's usually met with a little bit of better understanding and just how that may make sense. And then there's obviously going to be less of each natural resource if we use too much now.
Yeah.
One thing that I think helps to tackle those big global issues, such as climate change, because as a snow sports athlete, it's like, how can we help in this huge problem? Sometimes it seems so overwhelming. So what I think is effective is to boil it down to like, there's national level, state level, and then there's like your local level. So an example of that is in my hometown in Salt Lake City. We have really bad air quality in the winter. We get these horrible inversions, and it just blankets the city in this smog. And a lot of that smog is from the burning from the coal-powered plants. So one thing, some of the athletes, there's a local photographer who started doing a photo series, taking photos of athletes with gas masks on this overlook of the city. And so I agreed to do this photo shoot, and then I wrote a post about it. And you can link this local problem to the larger problem of climate change. And it was really like effective and visual, and it really resonated with everyone because we all want clean air, we all want clean water. So by looking at those things on a local level, it can help to make the bigger problem seem easier to tackle.
As Brendan mentioned, we're having this conversation. Remove the science from it. Remove global warming, climate change, whatever you want. If you just break it down to the base, layer of what you're actually doing to make a difference to protect and preserve the natural resources that we have. The one Earth that we exist on for the future generations. Nobody can argue with you that that's wrong or that doesn't need to be an initiative that is of huge concern for us right here and right now.
But what they can argue on is, but I want to make money now. I don't really care about my kids or my grandkids. So how do you tell them what you're doing now can not only benefit the future, but also will bring them money now? How can you show them that sustainability efforts and conservation will actually help the bottom line as well?
What kids and what grandkids if there isn't going to be a future generation, because it's not going to be a sustainable world that we're living in.
But they don't care about their kids and grandkids.
Yeah, right.
You can't be so logical. It's about the bottom line. So what have you guys worked with companies or sponsors where you could say, look, I'm pointing to this involvement in Green Sports Alliance or conservation efforts as a bottom line helper. Your company is gaining good PR, or you're saving money on resources, or what have you had any experiences where you can point? I know you have, where you've had athletes come to you for selfish reasons and then said, hey, I'm kind of digging this whole plant-based nutrition, and not just the effect it's having on my body, but the effect it's having on the world around me.
Yeah, well, I find too that I mean, we all have seen what's happened with the Prius over the last decade or so. People who can afford any car they want will very often buy a Prius. You know, I live in Los Angeles and I see a lot of Priuses and a lot of people who can afford whatever they want buy a Prius. And I think that shows that there are a lot of people who do care, obviously, and for a company, I think that could be very potentially exciting whether they care or not, because they see that there's a huge market for green. You know, people, there's demand, and if there's demand, there's going to be a company there, regardless of its philosophical view, to meet that demand. So I think when people put demand on a certain way of doing things, it will be met.
I would say I would probably quit that company that doesn't care about the kids and about the future and just be done with that, because as an athlete, you have to be really particular about who you work with. Like, to partner your personal brand with like a corporate brand or a corporate entity, like, for me, that's a choice that I take pretty seriously, to put my name on a product. And so I think it's good to ask those hard questions before and make sure that it's someone you want to work with that puts not just environmental responsibility, but social responsibility as like one of the main important philosophies of their brand.
As you spoke on the economics of it now, that there are many instances where it can in fact be profitable. Coming from the surf industry, for example, you know, the leading surfboard manufacturers now, every single one of them has an option to buy a surfboard that's made out of, you know, recycled, you know, renewed materials. The composites that are, you know, we're actually glassing these surfboards with less, you know, toxins, and so all the technology is there. It's just a matter of, you know, educating people that this is another, you know, viable option that, you know, they do have. And just looking at the exponential growth of, you know, these sorts of products in our industry, of, you know, you've got the rack of, you know, the recycled materials of the clothes that are being, you know, produced out of, or, you know, the surfboards or the wetsuits. You know, the numbers are staggering. Where a couple of years ago, you know, you know, what we call them, you know, green surfboards or eco boards, you know, there was a couple hundred produced, where this last year there was 20,000. And so each one of the companies now, you get people going in the surf shops asking for this option. If they don't have it, well, they're going to go to the, you know, competitor who does. So there's many circumstances where people who, you know, have, you know, woken up to, you know, this issue are going to choose the alternative. So, you know, if it's not there, there's you know, economic profit to be lost if you know, companies aren't on board in certain places.
This is from David in the audience. Caroline, skiing's a natural sport. How do you feel about the increasing reliance on artificial snow for competition courses and the impact on resources and water? We're not perfect. We already admitted that, right?
Yeah, I think that it's a tough question, especially going forward with climate change and decreased snowpack. And I think it's one of those things where we'll have to evaluate the cost benefit, especially the environmental cost benefits of whether that's really viable solution going forward. I'm not super familiar with that, so I think it's just going to be an evolving question as we go along on this, on the path.
We've heard what you're doing individual, which is great. Question, how can the Green Sports Alliance help you make an impact? Guessing this is from an employee of the Green Sports Alliance. How can they help you? Tell them right now. They're all ears.
Well, for me, obviously coming at it from a food angle, of course, having options in stadiums that are plant-based and therefore require less land, water, and fossil fuel to produce. So certainly not taking away, you know, all the conventional food. I mean, that's why people go to ball games. They want to, you know, eat that food, and I get that. But having an option, you know, giving people choices. I think we're at the point where in some stadiums there would be enough demand to support that. So I think that would be a big thing.
Yeah. Any ideas, guys?
Yeah, I think just getting more mainstream athletes involved in these discussions and getting them involved with other nonprofits and just making this part of a bigger consciousness.
It's happening right here. it's gatherings like this of amazing minds sitting together to have these discussions, bring in athletes from different sporting worlds to talk about the issues, and then drawing upon that information and sharing it in their own respective sporting worlds. And the more people that you educate is what it comes down to. What we're actually trying to accomplish and work towards here in the future. That's what needs to happen. So I look back at the surf industry when I leave from this conference. I'm going to have a lot of new ideas and resources and people to draw upon and then go to and say, hey, we're not the only ones trying to make these changes. It's happening over here in the NFL or NBA and across the board. So let's keep the momentum going.
You mentioned education, and some people talk about the greening of sports, and they say, of course, it's a great movement, and greening facilities and making them more efficient is great, but fan engagement is more important because it's more likely to spread out into a larger impact if you can get the billions of eyes that are watching you to care about the issue instead of just coming to your stadium in that one day and having that be effective. So certain teams are having competitions, whether it's fans have to identify recycling bins at their thing and if they can win a tablet computer if they find them all, or schools are having competitions for which sport can be the greenest on campus and they win some award at the end of the year. For you guys personally, do you find that it's easier to work with fellow athletes or fans on education, or do you find that it's easier to work with the companies, the sponsors, the event spaces on doing things that work for just themselves versus endeavors that involve more fan engagement?
Personally, singular athletes, that it's easier to influence one person to change their ways of thinking or to be a voice as opposed to a larger company or corporation that is again looking at running a business out of it. But it's just that snowball effect where you get enough athletes who are then involved with one concentrated group, then that's going to be the catalyst to making that change. But the one flaw that I see within the surf industry myself is a lot of companies that are providing alternative options, more environmentally mindful practices, but they're missing the why. That we talk about recycling, or okay, here's the bins at the stadium, but why? So okay, yeah, we know that plastic goes in this one, that goes in that one, but the bigger picture of what's the purpose behind it. And I see that in the surf industry where okay, we got the hang tags that 1% goes to this nonprofit that does environmental work, but what is it actually going to in the end? I know I'm doing something good, but until you can actually, I think, understand the bigger picture, that it's just going to be slowly moving forward. That once it resonates with people in their heart and they see the the truly significant impacts that we are having, it's hard for me at least to imagine people who will still turn a blind eye.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it needs to be sexier, right? Because that's what's easy to get people's eyes, is either tug at their heartstrings or make them excited. And it's easier with issues that happen within a generation. You can point to someone that you've lost to a disease. You can talk about statistics with drunk driving. There's so many moments in everyone's life that they can point to that get them interested in an issue. It's much harder with something that happens over generations and that is not as easy to see. And of course, we can see the very dramatic instances with, polar bears, or we can see commercials about animals that are at risk. But for some people, it still doesn't touch them in the way that something that happens instantly does. So how do you approach that element of it? How do you make it sexier? How do you make it more pressing now, as opposed to someone will figure that out like later, someone will invent something that fixes whatever. That's how people think. Oh, someone will figure that out, like sometime.
Yeah, people I find are not good long-term thinkers, especially like you say, past their generation. It's like, well, I'm not going to be here. What do I care? So I think it is like we're talking about before, the kids, the grandkids, kind of thinking about them. I don't know, someone needs to make a really good video or something.
A kid in an apocalyptic wasteland.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know, any good movie producers out there maybe do put together a documentary or
Because sometimes those
something
campaigns
short.
do work. It's
Yeah.
that very dramatic thing that sort of becomes viral or permeates people's consciousness in a way that hearing a message about it over and over hasn't done before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that getting the kids involved is a really powerful way to kind of like get things rolling. Like we do these presentations with Protect Our Winners where we go and talk to kids about the effects that climate change is having on the snow sports industry. And a lot of times we have like statistics that show how much snowfall is decreasing over even just the past like 10 years with rising temperatures. And kids, they think, you know, when you're a kid, you believe you can do the impossible. Like it doesn't seem, and so, I don't know, insurmountable. And then we have grants to support like follow-up programs in those schools, whether they want to start a vegetable garden or have like compost bin. So that's a really cool way that I feel like really resonates with young fans. But then on a broader level, I would say that it would be great to get more athletes involved in legislation and lobbying, because it's really powerful when a prominent athlete goes and speaks with members of Congress about their concern about an environmental issue. And so in Salt Lake, I partner with a couple of local nonprofits, and they kind of let me know when there's stuff going on that they need an advocate for or someone to go and speak for. And so that's been a really good way to get involved.
I think for me, it's athlete engagement that you know, may not fall under the term sexy, but rather cool. That, you know, if the top athletes that, you know, the youth are looking up to, and, you know, even the older generations, you know, look towards as, you know, being sources of inspiration, that if they're the voice for the change, you know, it resonates with people. And you know, that's where, you know, we've gotten a lot of people on board in the surfing industry, and been able to, you know, implement a lot of change within the companies, and you know, even within the, you know, sporting events, actual competitions that we have. You know, we're on the fringe of basically, you know, getting everyone to jump on board to be an entirely, you know, sustainably, you know, run and managed, you know, sporting event. And you know, we look at the surfing industry as, you know, something that youth generations, you know, even demographics that don't have the ocean, look at as kind of like a cool, you know, fun lifestyle to be a part of. And you know, if we're changing, you know, our ways there, that's just going to resonate, you know, outwards. And you know, in everybody's own, you know, respective, you know, sporting world, you know, as an athlete, you know, has that voice and the potential to reach and you know, change the masses, you know, way of thinking, getting them on board as well.
Someone else from the audience, how do you offset the inherent carbon footprint of your respective sports? Hella skiing has extensive travel, obviously, and how do you translate that to more mainstream sports teams and leagues and help them figure out how to offset their footprints?
That's a really good question. And it's one of the things Protect Our Winners this year had us, they're calculating the total carbon footprint from the season, and we're coming up with some ideas of how to offset that, and also to compare it to other industries, because we're not quite sure how we stack up compared. So they're working on that right now, and we contributed all that data, and so we're trying to determine that. It's a really good question.
I've partnered doing a lot of work with an organization called Sustainable Surf. They're at the leading forefront of, you know, developing the new surfboard technology, wetsuit technology, and laying out the framework of all these events. And you know, we've calculated, you know, my carbon footprint of all the travels and, you know, equipment that I'm you know, using throughout the year, and have delegated different offset projects around the world that will be working and, you know, donating money towards to offset that footprint.
Cool.
Yeah, and help people realize too the impact that food has. So, for example, we did this research a while ago, and so standard American breakfast, so bacon, eggs, toast, orange juice. If one person eats that every day for a year, and then switches over to eating, having a smoothie that has far more nutrients from hemp protein, pea protein, rice protein, we have the whole thing. I'll give out the website and people can check it out, but you make that switch. So the difference between those two is the equivalent in CO2 equivalent emissions driving from Vancouver, BC to Tijuana, Mexico in a mid-sized car that gets 26 miles per gallon. So the whole west coast of the United States, so that's one meal, one person. So just trying to put that into perspective, that just by shifting what you eat actually has a big impact. And also too, there was that UN report in 2006 that showed animal agriculture was actually the biggest producer of CO2 equivalent emissions, more so than transportation, like all of it combined, boats, cars, planes, everything. So I think helping people understand that they can make changes. Government's great and all these other changes and things we can influence are great, but just what we eat too has a big impact. So we can start that right away.
Yeah,
To me, that makes me feel good because we have more power than I think some of us may think we do just by making simple decisions like that.
Yeah, absolutely. What have you seen change since you started getting into conservation efforts, and what's next for you? What do you think the big step is that still hasn't been addressed or that you personally have on your radar for each of you?
I spoke a little bit on it earlier. I mean, if you want to be, a surfer, you have to be purchasing a surfboard. Up until a couple years ago, they're made out of, incredibly, toxic materials, from the, foam blanket, to the finishing, polishes that you're putting on it. Now we've, developed and created the technology where we're recycling blanks that before, or surfboards that were just going into landfills, creating surfboard blanks out of algae-based petroleum and oils rather than polyurethane. And the numbers of those sales, last year there was 20,000, where if you went back 4 years ago there was a couple hundred maybe, and now it's becoming a normal ask when people are going to surf shops if those are available. So further developing that technology, and a huge resistance is people's lack of understanding that it is comparable material, the construction of it. And you don't lose the performance, and it's also right there, relatively the same price point. So for me personally, it's working to develop this technology, and actually being one at the forefront to go out there and try it in waves that I can report back and say, yeah, it worked, and it's performing as well as the others. So that's a big initiative, as well as just being a voice within the industry for the changes within the companies. Of they're all still shipping all of their clothing from overseas in single-use plastic bags, and ways that we can just look and make subtle changes that in the long term projection will have a huge impact. So since I really got involved, every industry, majority of the industries, the brands within the surfing industry are making an initiative at some level, some greater than others, where this is companies like Patagonia, where it's their baseline, versus others who are just kind of dabbling. But that's the direction that it's going, and pretty soon, unless you are at the forefront, people are going to be ignoring your brand and choosing one that is on board.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess in the past 10 years that I've been working in the snow sports and outdoor industries, maybe 10 years ago, like a third of the companies had something on their website about how they were addressing the sustainability aspect of their manufacturing and just their brand in general. And I would say now probably like 90% of those companies and the industry as a whole are having those conversations. So it's pretty much like similar to the surf industry, where if you're not doing it, like, you're the odd one out. What I would like to see in the future is to get the government, our legislation, and to get government more forward thinking. Yeah. I think, that's the next big step.
For me, it's transparency in food labels. I think just giving the consumer a good sense of the resources used, CO2 equivalent, consumed to get a product there on the shelf in front of you would be really good. Because I think people do want to make the right decision. I do think they care. But I think sometimes it's tough. It's tough to know what's the best choice and what's not. So I think having that as part of the food labels and just making it a common thing would be a step in the right direction.
Yeah, a lot of what you guys have said has been education, and also comfort and ease. People are used to doing things the way they always have. Until you make it easy for them to have another option, most people are not going to choose that. They're going to stick with their routine. So obviously the education aspect is huge. One last question for Greg. This guy just turned 65, guy or gal. I'm guessing it's a guy because it's terrible handwriting. And he or she says, is it too late to take up big wave surfing?
Well, my response to that, anybody who ever asks about big wave surfing, is that term, in my opinion, it's relative. That I've been riding waves my entire life and working towards riding the biggest in the world. So my interpretation of a big wave, as opposed to somebody else who's just started, is much different. So if he's a novice surfer, a big wave might be 6 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet. But it's that same feeling that you get when you're at the edge of your comfort level and feeling those sensations of fear, but kind of working through them, embracing them rather than running the other way. It's the same feeling. So 65 years old, a big wave surfer, absolutely.
Give it a shot, right? Why not?
Yeah.
Just use a sustainable board. Well, thank you guys so much, and hopefully you'll take advantage of having them here. Hopefully there'll be moments for everyone to speak with the athletes if your company wants to endorse them or work with them or learn from them. Hint, hint. So thanks, guys, so much.
All right, thank you. Another round of applause for our guests. Sarah, great job moderating. Brendan, Caroline, Greg, you guys have huge voices. Appreciate you using them the way you do. All right, a couple announcements, and we'll get on to our reception here real soon. We have breakfast that will be served at 7:30 a.m. in the exhibit hall to give you time to visit with our exhibitors and attend mini sessions in the UPS Clubhouse Theater. We've got some great sessions planned, so please check that out, and do check out our exhibitors. They're an important part of the Alliance, and we need you to learn from them and make some connections. Some of the sessions we have lined up are from Panasonic, ABM, Green Building Services, the EPA, Digital Lumens, and Ephesus Lighting. So be sure to consult your program. I'm sure it's on your app, and you might even win a jersey if you play our games. And our opening keynote, be sure to catch that. It's Dr. Beth Stevens will be on at 9 a.m. Please wear your lanyard so you can get into the hall. Before we head over to the reception next door, I want to thank the Stoller Family Estate for sponsoring the opening event. And I'm happy to introduce Gary Mortensen, president of Stoller, to say a few words.
So I was having a panic attack when I was down there watching these panelists talk, impossibly young, talented, accomplished, and all I can think about is, God, I should have worn Spanx or something up here. That was brutal. Congratulations, everybody. You guys are amazing. Anyways, hey, any wine drinkers here tonight? Great. Any beer drinkers? That's all right. We have a saying in Oregon that it takes a lot of good Oregon beer to make good Oregon wine, so we're all right with that too. So we are really pleased to be part of the Green Sports Alliance. It just really maps completely to what we have in our DNA, which is sustainability. We make about 100 different decisions in the vineyard and the winery every single time that we have a harvest come along. And, it's all the things from the kinds of, electing not to use certain kinds of pesticides to having bird boxes from the oak trees that fall down in our vineyards so we can encourage natural predation and things like that. So it goes all the way to our winery, which is the world's first LEED Gold certified winery, which is kind of a cool thing. If you make it out to see us, you'll come to our tasting room, and it's a net zero tasting room, which is also cool. And we're building a second facility right now, and when it's done, and it's got to get done because harvest is coming because it's getting warmer every year, and we're working on, in fact, I got to go back and get that done here, but when we're done with that, we believe that we're going to have one of the largest, if not the largest, solar array of any winery in America. So that's going to be cool too. So we'll have it on our LEED Gold winery, on our tasting room, and then on the new one. So it's going to be amazing what happens. But it's all about choices, and we really believe this. We believe that this is important what we're doing, and we also believe that quality comes through too. So if you've had a chance to have our wines, hopefully you'll agree with that. There's ways you can cut corners, and there's just ways to do things right. We believe in doing things right. We believe that with everyone here and your participation in this believes that you're doing it right. And I think that what the Green Sports Alliance is doing, and through the voice that they're going through sports, is helping all of us bring awareness to this. So come join us for the reception in the exhibit hall. And then while you're there, stop by. We're out in the outside part, but we'd love for you to come by and hear a little bit more about what we're doing. But enjoy. Thank you.
All right, Gary, thanks so much for your support, and I think it's time to go sample some of that wine. Have fun, guys. Thank you.